Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. Today is the day, folks. We are going to go back to the Nether. We're going to do a bunch of mining for ancient debris, and we are going to end up with full netherite equipment. I've been working with 3 pieces of netherite equipment for this long. We've got 2 pickaxes, of course, kind of the most important things to put netherite on, in my opinion. And then these netherite boots, which we can still upgrade with at least 1 more enchantment, but they are probably the things that I wanted to last the longest, since they have depth strider and feather falling and some of the enchantments that are really valuable to me day to day. We also obviously are missing the diamond chest plate here, but there are 3 pieces of diamond armor that we could still upgrade to netherite, and there's even, I believe, an achievement for that, or an advancement in Java Edition for getting a full suit of netherite armor. I would also love to have a netherite axe and shovel, and probably a netherite sword as well. The sword is going to get 1 extra point of attack damage from that, and the axe is going to be a bit more durable along with the shovel. In fact, the durability of all of our items is going to be increased if we upgrade to netherite, and we can reproduce netherite upgrade templates now that we've mined a few more diamonds, so I have plenty of opportunity to upgrade stuff to netherite. Now all I need is some ancient debris and a little bit more gold. But we're going to be searching for ancient debris in a very specific way, because I went out to a desert fairly recently and got hold of a bunch of sand. We filled about 4 shulker boxes worth of sand, and I've used a little bit since, smelting some into glass. But the only 2 things that I think we ever need to use sand for that cannot be obtained in other means, like, for example, you can trade glass from villagers, so you don't really need to smelt sand. We can get hold of sandstone by mining further down in a desert, so you don't really need to craft sand into sandstone. But the only 2 things that you ever really need to use sand for in a crafting recipe is concrete powder, which creates a variety of colorful materials similar to terracotta, and TNT, which is of course crafted by combining 4 sand with 5 gunpowder. And my preferred method of mining for ancient debris involves a lot of TNT, so we're going to head back to our mob farm to see how much gunpowder we've got lying around. And fortunately, there's already a fair bit of it here in this chest, so I'm going to break out a shulker box and we're going to grab a bunch of gunpowder. Now, we're probably going to want to bring 5 shulkers of a gunpowder home with us, so I am going to need to AFK at this farm a little bit. But of course, combining 5 shulker boxes of gunpowder and 4 shulker boxes of sand would at least guarantee that we have a full shulker box of TNT, and we can take that to the nether to do some netherite mining. Of course, if we're going to be AFKing that long to get a bunch more gunpowder, we'll probably need to shift the rest of these resources, otherwise they'll end up clogging the sorting system. Truly, none of these resources need to go to waste, because the bone meal can be used for all sorts of things. The rotten flesh can be traded to clerics. The string, if we're not using it for other things, can be traded to fishermen. Honestly, the arrows down the end here are the only thing that I would consider just chucking out and destroying. But in this case, we're going to turn all of the bones into bone meal. We'll turn all of those into bone blocks for easy storage. And then we can just chuck out the rest of these stacks of arrows and allow them to despawn. Or if you're feeling spicy, light them on fire with a flint and steel. But just be sure that you don't burn down your entire mob farm in the process. So that's the entire mob farm storage cleaned out. I'm going to go away and do a workout while I AFK at the farm, and we should come back to a whole bunch of gunpowder. Well, this could have gone better. For one thing, I realized partway through when I went down to check on the amount of gunpowder that the clock here, the one that drives the entire farm and switches the platforms on and off, had stopped for some reason, and the items simply weren't transferring between the hoppers. And I thought this was close enough to the spawn chunks that it would stay loaded, but maybe it's just on the radius where redstone stuff stops working when the player is no longer around, and so it must have unloaded at some point and caused the farm to stop working. Fine when I'm not here, but when I am and I'm expecting the farm to work, I guess we need to install a lever to make sure that the farm switches on and off. And whilst I was flying on down here, you may notice the change in my levels. I ended up flying down here, aiming to hit the water, hit the side of these chests, and took my 2nd death of the series so far. As you can see, if I hit T there, I was doomed to fall, basically by flying down here and impacting on the side of this chest with my elytra. Fortunately, I was able to recover all of my stuff, so that's fine. I just respawned over there at spawn, since the bed that I'd set my spawn at up there was not really accessible, and now we are acquiring a bit of gunpowder again. I have been collecting this sort of frequently and putting it in the shulker boxes. I don't quite have as much as I hoped to have by the time we got this expedition underway, but at this point I don't have the time to wait around much longer, so I'm planning on just taking all the gunpowder I've got, converting it into as much TNT as we can carry, and we'll head out to the Nether. With the gunpowder I brought with us, we should be able to manage to craft at least half a shulker box of TNT, and I don't think I had enough sand for a full shulker box anyway, so we might at least get this out of the way now. In order to craft these, we're going to throw all of the sand on the floor. We're just going to grab a bunch of gunpowder from in here, and then we can craft that, and the rest of the sand will just hop into our inventory. As one of these gunpowder boxes empties, we're going to fill that with TNT. Let's grab as many sand blocks as I can carry from here, and there we go. We've just about made it to the halfway point in this shulker box. Not too shabby, and it's going to be plenty to take us through this first expedition through the Nether mining for ancient debris. I'll put the remainder of the sand back in there. We'll stash the gunpowder away for some firework crafting supplies, and we've got two more preparations that I would like to make before we set off. The first is to head into my house here and grab as many fire resistance potions as I have made. I did brew up a couple of batches before the video, so I have maybe 9 total waiting for me here, and we can just stash these in my inventory for now, since we'll only be taking out the TNT a little bit at a time. The other thing I would like to do is see if I can find a bow that has flame, so that I can combine those bows together, repair this one, and end up with the flame enchantment, which will allow us to light the TNT from a distance by firing a flaming arrow at it. Unfortunately, I do have an enchanted book with flame already, and I have just enough levels to make sure that we can do that, so I guess we'll just repair the bow when I've got a few more levels available to me. Now we have flame on this bow. This is going to be our TNT ignition switch. We've got our shulker of TNT, we've got 9 fire resistance potions, and we've got our flame bow. Let's head through to the Nether. And you may remember that we already have a netherite mine down here, where we acquired the first ancient debris that allowed us to upgrade the netherite equipment that I already have. But since we've already mined out a bunch of tunnels in that direction, I'm actually going to fly through the Nether to see if I can locate a good enough landmass to start another netherite mine, especially since that one over there goes through a basalt delta. And you know what? Here in the neighboring Soul Sand Valley, this piece of terrain does seem to be linked to the lava down there, so we can guarantee that we can dig down through an area that isn't going to be flooded with lava too badly. I'm going to start a staircase down here so we can effectively be mining in the opposite direction to the netherite mine we have already begun. I always get a little bit concerned when I see the magma blocks on the way down here, but in this case I think that just means that we are passing through the lava lake level. But unfortunately it looks like we have dug into the lava after all. Well, I guess this is where we use our first fire resistance potion. I'm going to drop on in here and use some of the blocks I already have to shore up the area down here so that we can hopefully make it down to an area we can start digging. Working in lava like this always feels a little bit precarious, but trust me, with the fire resistance potion going for 8 minutes, we should be perfectly safe. Alright, so now we're down here at Y15 in the Nether. There is no time like the present. We are immediately going to dig into a vein of ancient debris. Look at that. That's a stroke of luck. Potentially an auspicious sign for our netherite mining operation here. Just one debris, but we might as well bring it with us. From this spot, we're going to dig out to our left and to our right, and we're going to press F3 and G to locate the nearest chunk border, since, as I've mentioned in the past when we've been looking for netherite, digging along chunk borders means you're effectively exposing the terrain of 2 chunks, and with each chunk having an individual chance to spawn a vein of ancient debris, that's usually a good way of making sure that you expose as much debris as possible. So we're going to begin here by digging a super long tunnel and also finding more ancient debris hidden in the walls. We're going to dig around at the diagonals just in case, but it looks like once again that is just one piece. Already having 2 debris in my inventory feels good though. We're going to continue digging this tunnel out basically until I encounter a serious obstacle, which these individual lava pockets do not count as, but maybe if we dig out into a ravine that is filled with lava or something, I will reconsider going that way any further. While we've still got the fire resistance effect, we can go through those very easily though, so I will keep an eye out for any obstacles like that it seems like we could pass through. And will you look at this? We are already getting more debris. That is enough to get ourselves a full netherite ingot now, which I'm very excited about. That's all. One more in the corner. Always check the corners. That's probably going to go onto the sword or maybe the helmet. I don't know. There's a couple of valuable pieces of equipment here that really are overdue for that netherite coating. Okay, this is closer to what I was talking about with the obstacles, though. We've got 3.5 minutes of fire resistance left. I say we go in here and see what's up. Looks like there is plenty of lava through here, but we are on the ground, which means we can potentially just build ourselves a little tunnel through here. And it looks like we're hitting terrain relatively close after that. So all we need to do is make sure all of this gets filled in. We've got plenty of netherrack to do that. And we need to make sure that we are aware that when we place the TNT going through here, this is going to blow out the entire area. All of these blocks are going to be destroyed and lava is going to flow in from our surroundings. But I think as long as we know that's a risk, we're going to take it. And with a little bit of work, we've been able to create an artificial tunnel that we can simply dig through and get to the other side of this lava obstacle. Looks like we got something similar coming up here as well, and this one looks a bit more precarious, so I need to get another fire resistance potion on deck just in case this one is looking like it's going to run out. And this definitely feels like a much larger pocket of lava, but they all feel large because you can only really see for a block and a half in front of you. And there we go. We should be able to now continue through here without running into too much additional lava. I think at this point, though, I'm going to save this fire resistance potion, and we're going to dig until we reach the next big lava obstacle, at which point I'm probably going to turn around, call it a day there, and start placing some TNT. You might want to set a time limit or a distance limit for how far you dig, since you'll basically be placing TNT proportional to the distance of this tunnel. And the only other thing you need to be aware of is that gravel can sometimes be unstable. It can be supported floating over the top of a lava lake. So just be a little careful when you're down here tunneling and there's a patch of gravel around. We have one more debris here in the walls, it looks like. Oh, make that 2. Is there going to be a third somewhere in here? Nope, looks like it is just the 2 in that case. Very good, though. Here is our 8th, which means we're already up to 2 netherite ingots. Oh, and a 9th as well. How wonderful. Well, it's good fortune that those appeared there, because just beyond that, we run into that lava obstacle I was talking about. So now we're going to switch to the TNT placing phase. At this point, we're going to open this up. We're going to stash away the debris that we've already gathered and a few of the other resources. I'm going to grab a couple of stacks of TNT, and we're going to back off through the tunnel, placing these 4 blocks apart as we go. And one thing to bear in mind is that if you do have a fire spread switched on in your world, then the fire can potentially light the TNT. So if you have any lava around or anything like that, you might want to be a little careful of how you place the TNT, and don't stand too close to any that you have placed very recently. So I'm just going to back off all the way down this tunnel back in the direction that I came, which is quite a long distance at this point. We're 300 or so blocks out from 0, and it looks like a fire has just been lit in the tunnel ahead of me, so we can expect this TNT to experience a chain reaction in just a second, and we'll deal with the consequences of that when we make our way back down the tunnel. But for now, that at least seems like it's done its job. Gonna take a quick look around for debris, and obviously we'll have a lava obstacle to contend with when we make our way back down the tunnel. But for now, I think we'll soldier on. That's the end of our first stack, and we are almost back to our intersection. So that's looking good. I think that's a decent amount of TNT to spend. We're gonna leave ourselves a few blocks of explosion room. I think we're gonna make it about there. We're gonna shoot a fire arrow at this first TNT, and then back off to a safe distance while the magic happens. And now the explosions have cleared out a pretty large section of this tunnel. A bit of lava is pouring in from the ceiling and occasionally from the walls, but we can pillar up to dispose of that if it constitutes a big enough problem for us. And remember, you've still got all of those fire resistance potions that you can call on in an emergency. But having blown out this area, we should be left with a little bit of terrain from which we can spot whether or not any ancient debris is peeking out from the walls. I'm not expecting to find too much right here, since we did find a couple of veins nice and early while we were mining out the tunnel. And it's at this point that my eyes usually start playing tricks on me, and I see some soul sand or some quartz ore at a weird distance, and I will often think that I've missed a spot of ancient debris when actually I'm just looking at a different block. So if you look at that stuff out of the corner of your eye, remember to double check before you confirm it's an ancient debris. Obviously, the more TNT you put into this, the more terrain will be blown out by the explosions. So since we placed these 4 blocks apart, they're blowing out a tunnel of this sort of size, which isn't quite as big as if we placed them maybe 2 blocks apart and it was destroying a lot of the surrounding terrain. It all really depends on how much TNT you are willing to craft and how much you're willing to spare. But here we go. As those explode further on down the tunnel, we've got a couple of debris hanging from the ceiling right here. And this looks like a tidy little vein of 2 that we can grab. Once again, we'll check the corners. Remember to create some space so you can pick up the debris in your inventory, because you will be picking up a lot of blocks from the floor around you. And of course, remember that ancient debris is also impervious to fire damage. If it falls into lava, it's not going to be destroyed. It will simply float back to the surface, where as long as you're careful, you should be able to collect it without any further further harm befalling either you or your resources. Here's another little vein of debris. Let's check the corners once again to make sure that we don't have any more lurking, but it looks like that is it. But that is another 4 debris we can add to the box, and already we're at 13. So this method is going pretty well. Regardless of whether or not you're interested in collecting the resources from the quartz ore around us, and naturally there's going to be a little bit of nether gold ore that gets broken as well, you'll still be able to collect the experience, because TNT actually drops the experience orbs from blocks that it breaks that would drop experience if mined by the player. It didn't always used to do that. That's a relatively new quality of life improvement to the game, so keep that in mind if you're mining in older versions. And in this case, it looks like we have run into our first major wall of lava, but we're not all the way down the tunnel yet. This isn't the lava right at the end, so in this case, I am just going to drink a potion of fire resistance and swim my way through this to the other side. I think I should be able to get through around here. And most of the area that... Oh, nope, there's a TNT block right there. Okay, so what we should now need to do is either wait for that TNT block to explode or fire some arrows through the lava in hope of hitting where that TNT block was placed. Because if we hear a hiss, we'll know the TNT has been lit. And naturally, we don't want to be belly up to a piece of TNT when it's about to explode. So we need to treat this situation with a little bit of caution. There we go. I think that arrow hit. And shortly after, we should hear an explosion. Okay, that sounded good. And here we go. Now we've gotten to the good stuff. This is a section of tunnel that has clearly been blasted out by the remainder of that TNT exploding. And this is where we've run into a couple of other potential issues. You see, the biomes on the surface are still going to apply down here, and if the player is a good distance away, then potentially some mobs can start to spawn down here. As we transition into a crimson forest here, we have run into hoglins, which can be a good source of food down here, actually, since if they're lit on fire and you kill them, they will drop cooked pork chops. But you'll also find piglins and a few other mobs potentially spawning down here underneath their relevant surface biomes, and in that case, you might want to bring some gold armor on you just to make sure you don't aggro too many of the piglins if they pack spawn down here in large numbers. We've got 2 more debris lining our pockets from that small vein over here. Let's continue exploring down the tunnel that we've already blown out. And I don't see any more in this area, so this might be the spot where we've encountered a couple of veins already. Let's keep on moving, light the next TNT, watch the magic happen. We can block off any small pockets of lava that appear in the side walls just for our own comfort when coming back down this tunnel, but we probably want to come back down this tunnel while this fire resistance potion is still active as well, so hopefully we should be reaching the end over here. And once upon a time, I would have advocated for the removal of these massive lava falls, potentially because they could be hiding debris behind them, but also because they can block our return trip. But for now, I think we're just going to remove some of the smaller ones and not worry too much about the larger ones, because frankly, I think it saves you time if you're not worrying about placing all of these blocks, which you have to do quite slowly if you're floating around in lava anyway. There's one more debris in the wall right here. We're going to grab that with the pickaxe, and let's see if there's any more at the diagonals. Nope, looks like that one's been fully excavated. Our next batch of TNT explodes, and I believe this right here is going to be the end of our tunnel. Yes, we're 400 plus blocks out from 0, so that's going to be the end of the tunnel. Right, we've got 2 minutes of fire resistance. As long as we don't see any more debris in the walls around us, we can make our way back to the start of the tunnel and begin the next one. It's going to feel like a bit of a tight squeeze as we navigate our way through these giant patches of lava, but you know what? I think we should be okay. And another great thing about these tunnels is that if you're ever short on quartz, or if you want a bit of nether gold ore for decorative purposes, or you want to come down here looking for blackstone deposits, this can be a really great thing to have around. If we don't need to focus on it right now, we can always come back and claim those resources later. But let's quickly take stock of our first little journey down there. We got 16 blocks of ancient debris for about a stack of TNT and about 400 blocks worth of travel. We've spent 2 fire resistance potions. All in all, I'd say that's a pretty good trade for what's going to amount to 4 netherite upgrades. We're going to be able to upgrade all of our remaining tools and even a piece of armor. So we only need enough debris for 1 more upgrade if that was all we were here to do. However, I would like to start acquiring more netherite. I want to get hold of full blocks of netherite for various purposes, mostly just as a bit of a flex, but also because it might be kind of fun to build with them or use them as a beacon base or something like that. And so while we're not going to do it super frequently, I am going to spend a bunch of time and the rest of this shulker box of TNT mining out a few more tunnels here in the nether, blasting them out for ancient debris and seeing how much we can bring home. And as I discussed in our previous video in which we were mining for ancient debris for the first time, you can of course do this with beds if you want to set up a wool farm and a wood farm and use the slightly cheaper alternative to mining out a desert for the sand you need to make some TNT. But honestly, sand is relatively abundant. It doesn't take all that long to get that much, and I find the TNT method so much more pleasant than using beds because you don't have to concentrate on what you're doing and make sure that you don't get you and your armor and everything else blown up in the process. So I would have much rather used TNT for this, and that's why we're focusing on that method above any other today. Looks like our second tunnel is already off to a great start. I've got one debris here, and that looks like that's all there was for that vein. Oh, no, looks like we should have checked the corners. There we go, and glad I did that. We've got 2 from that vein. That looks like that'll be it, though. And naturally, any more that might be hiding in the walls that we haven't just seen is going to be exposed by the blasts of TNT through here anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and switch to doing this on a live stream, which will have happened yesterday by the time you folks are seeing this recording. We're going to use up the remainder of the TNT that's in that shulker box if I have time to do all of that, and we'll see how many ancient debris we've brought home by the end of this trip. Hey folks, welcome back. So I've now done a lot more tunneling, and I had to go and brew another set of fire resistance potions because the 9 I had were not nearly enough to get us done with all of the TNT stacks that I brought with me. But now we have tunnels extending to the left and to the right, or potentially north and south, depending on which way we're facing. Okay, east and west is the way we're facing. So I guess we traveled south in order to create this series of tunnels. Anyway, we ended up with a bunch of ancient debris now. We have basically 2 stacks, 127 more or less. And I did want to push for 128th piece of debris because obviously when you bring ancient debris home, you want to bring it home in a nice number that's divisible by 4 so that you can end up with enough netherite scrap to make full netherite ingots. But either way, we've got plenty of that now, and we can take it home and use that to craft not just the remaining netherite ingots we need to upgrade our tools and armor, but probably a full netherite block as well. That did use up all of the rest of the TNT I had, though, and there were several tunnels there that were really kind of awkward. They ended up in lava pools more often than not, so I ended up having to abandon a couple of them in favor of just picking a tunnel that was going to be easier to get through and didn't involve slogging through lava in order to get all of the prizes within. But now we can return to the overworld where, of course, it is raining. It feels like it's always raining every time I step out of the nether, but either way, we actually have enough ancient debris that I can throw it in the auto smelter here if I want to, although the blast furnaces here might get it done a little bit quicker. Feels more appropriate to me putting it in the blast furnaces for some reason. I don't know quite why, but it feels like netherite scrap should only come out of blast furnaces. You shouldn't be able to cook it in a regular furnace just to give you more stuff to do with the blast furnace. But of course, you can cook it in whatever furnace you desire as long as it's not a smoker. Having split that into 4 even piles, I'm actually going to keep the remainder, the 31 ancient debris, in the storage system here, where obviously it's all going to go to filling up one of the item filters over in this section here, but I did put an ancient debris filter in here for a reason. We also do have a couple of ancient debris there, so if I wanted to make up numbers, I could, but I like the idea of storing some in here, acquiring it in large quantities, and using it either as a very unusual decorative block or using it for its unique properties, which it actually shares with the block of netherite, so I'll be able to discuss those in a second once we have made one. Of course, the thing I'm forgetting is that we also need to bring some gold to the party here, so let's see how much of that we have. Not a great deal, but we've got plenty of gold ingots, so that at least should suffice, and if we want some gold ore, or I think we might have some raw gold knocking around, we can also fortune this deep slate gold, so I might do that to make sure that we have enough gold to use for the purpose of converting this netherite scrap into full netherite ingots. Yep, we came away with 50 raw gold from that, so that's adequate for our needs. And at this point, the blast furnaces are almost done with our netherite scrap, so let's grab that, and that's actually going some way to restoring the XP levels I lost earlier in the episode. So once we've put together all of the netherite scrap, we have put in the work to get 16 netherite ingots, which, first of all, we're going to craft a bunch into a single block of netherite, and the remaining 7 should actually be more than enough to upgrade all of the tools and armor that I have left. We've got 3 pieces of armor if you count the chest plate as well, and 3 weapons there. And let me tell you, it feels really good to be holding a full block of netherite. This stuff is really quite special. It takes a little bit longer to mine than the other resource blocks, which is yet another reason I don't recommend using it for beacons, because they are a pain to set up and take down. Obviously, it's a fairly expensive block to do that with, but you can use it as part of a beacon base if you just want to show off. But perhaps one of its most unique properties is that, like ancient debris, it is blast proof, but it can also be pushed by a piston, and that makes it extremely extremely useful for farms that use explosives. For example, if you're setting up something like a tree farm and you're using TNT to destroy the logs so that you don't have to mine them yourself with an axe, TNT can potentially destroy some of the components of the farm, rendering it inoperable. But if you're using blocks of ancient debris or netherite as the movable blocks in that farm, you can potentially have those in there without risking them being destroyed. A lot of the other blocks that are resistant to TNT explosions, like obsidian, cannot be pushed using pistons. The whole point is that they are immovable. So the properties of a block of netherite are kind of unique in that sense, because you can have a pushable block that is also not going to be affected by TNT explosions. And I am very happy to put this block of netherite here in our item filter setup, although I will of course need to acquire a second block of netherite if I want to program the item filter. I might be in luck though, because I'm fairly certain if we convert the rest of this netherite scrap into ingots, we'll get 8 of those, and with 9 of them going into a second block of netherite, there we go, we've got 6 left over, the perfect number for our tool and armor upgrades. And this other block of netherite can replace the filter material block in there, and now we are filtering netherite blocks. So if I happen to throw any netherite blocks into my storage system, that is where they will end up. It's going to be a while before I can do that, let me tell you. But for right now, I will need to dip back into my diamond supply and probably break down these blocks of diamond that I created in the previous episode as a beacon demonstration, because we're going to need to duplicate our netherite upgrade smithing template, and that's been waiting in the basement of my house over here for just such an occasion. We've got 2 of these sitting in here already, also next to another netherite scrap that we could have used for more upgrades if we wanted to. But anyway, we can look in here, we can probably grab a stack of netherrack from in here so that we have enough material, and I want to at least make sure that we have 7 or 8 of those in our pocket, just in case we will need to upgrade more stuff to netherite later. You never know, right? Because while it's tempting to assume that these netherite tools are going to be around forever, there are other circumstances in which we could lose them. We could drop them on the ground and they would despawn. Even though they are immune to lava, they're not immune to explosions. If they were dropped on the ground, they could be destroyed by lightning strikes. I've had that happen to me once or twice. And potentially if I just throw one carelessly into a cactus, then that's going to destroy the tool and I'll be very unhappy. So one thing I'm going to do before I make the upgrades to netherite is make sure that I'm happy with all of the enchantments that are on these, because it's going to be impossible to combine these with other diamond tools once they are upgraded to netherite. And I do have a silk touch shovel, which I think is inside of here, which I'm considering combining, yeah, there we go, combining with my diamond shovel so that that has silk touch, and I no longer need to worry about getting flint out of gravel. It's a little bit expensive in terms of enchantment cost, but thankfully I've got some of those levels back now, so we can do that, and now I'm happy to upgrade that into netherite. I think I'll leave the axe for now, but having a silk touch axe is really useful for gathering mushroom blocks and a few other things that cannot be gotten using anything other than a silk touch tool. But now it is time to return to the blacksmith's forge and start smithing. So let's see, we've got our sword here. The sword could use looting 3 and sharpness 5, but I'll probably end up applying those using books instead of combining a sword. So totally okay with that. We're gonna add our smithing template, and we're going to upgrade that to netherite. Once again, observing that the attack damage has increased from 9.5 to 10.5, a full additional attack damage for the netherite sword. The same will be true of the axe as well. That now has 10 attack damage, but is obviously a slower attacking weapon, and we haven't really specialized it for attacking enchantments. We could put sharpness or smite or something on this if we wanted to, but for now I'm just happy upgrading it to netherite and getting the additional boost of durability. Likewise, the shovel, we can throw that in there as well, and very excited to have a silk touch netherite shovel that's going to last us through all of the sand digging I will have to do to replace all of the stuff we turned into TNT this episode. Next up, I think this helmet is about as good as it could be, so we're going to add netherite to that, and that's keeping the armor trim that we have already applied to it, which is that band of lapis blue. So we're going to add that back on. We're going to do the same thing with our leggings, and I think I might even decide on some armor trim for the leggings pretty soon, but for now, we're going to put those back on. Those have Swift Sneak 3 now as well, so those are really the perfect leggings for what I need to do here. And even though it's not a regular part of my current loadout, I think we're going to return to this protection, unbreaking, and mending chestplate and complete our full set of netherite armor, because with that, we have completed a challenge. We get the Cover Me in Debris advancement, and we even get a little bit of XP from that as well. That's kind of nice. That is down here in the Advancements tab, all completed. And there is potentially another suggested use for a netherite ingot here, to use a compass on a lodestone. That actually branches off from obtaining ancient debris, which hints at the fact that there are more uses for netherite than just upgrading your tools and armor. And I'll be happy to go over those in a future episode, but now look at us. We're all kitted out in our battle armor and our best set of tools. This is a very exciting thing. It's really nice to have a full suit of netherite again. Not only that, but we managed to get 2 netherite blocks in this episode, and I'm so happy that we finally got hold of some netherite blocks. Like I said, it's probably going to be a while until we go out in search of ancient debris and netherite again, but you never know. We could end up doing some stuff with lodestones in the near future and explaining a bit more about how those work. But I will leave you with this, folks. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Best of luck if you're out there finding some ancient debris, and in the meantime, leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you folks soon. Take care, bye for now.